Mariano just did something no one thought he had the guts to do, and Carter never saw it coming. The Dutton ranch has survived fire. It has survived floods. It has survived betrayal from its own blood. But nothing, and we mean nothing, prepares this family for the night Mariano decides Carter is worth more dead than alive. For months, this man played the long game. He smiled across negotiation tables like a man who had all the time in the world. He sent gifts to the ranch, little gestures wrapped in fake respect, the kind of moves that make you think a person actually has a conscience buried somewhere underneath the cruelty. He let Rip believe Carter was safe. He let Beth believe there was still a deal to be made. A bargaining chip, that's all Carter ever was to him. Something to be traded later for land, for cattle, for silence. But patience was never really his style, was it? Patience is just a mask cruelty wears until it gets bored of pretending. It happens on a cold night, the kind of night where the air itself feels like it's holding its breath. Carter isn't the scared kid who got dragged into this mess back in season 1 anymore. Months of captivity changed him, sharpened him. He spent every single day studying Mariano's operation from the inside, memorizing faces, memorizing routes, memorizing the exact moment the guards get lazy. And he actually believes, he has found the one crack in the wall, a weak point. A window where Mariano's grip loosens just enough for a boy to slip through and run. But here's the part that should make your stomach drop. Mariano already knew. He had known the whole time. Every second of Carter's so-called planning, every whispered escape strategy, was being watched like a slow, sick experiment, because Mariano didn't want to stop Carter from trying. He wanted to see if Carter still had that stubborn Dutton fire in him. The same fire that built an empire out of Montana dirt. He wanted proof before he decided what Carter's life was actually worth. So when Carter finally makes his move, breaking free from a supply room and sprinting toward the tree line under a moonless sky, thinking freedom is finally within reach, Mariano is already standing on a ridge above him with a rifle in his hands. And this is the detail that changes everything. There's no rage in his eyes, no panic, just something far colder, the calm of a man who made peace with cruelty a long, long time ago. One shot, that's all it takes. Carter falls into the wet grass, and for one unbearable second, it feels like the entire world of Dutton Ranch just stops breathing. Let that sink in for a moment. The boy who survived tragedy, the boy Rip and Beth pulled in when he had absolutely nowhere else to go, the boy who represented one thing this family desperately needed, hope, is gone in an instant. And Mariano? He doesn't celebrate. He doesn't even flinch. He just turns to his men and gives one cold, simple order. Make sure the body is never found. Because a body is evidence, and evidence starts wars he isn't ready to fight with the Duttons just yet. Smart, right? Almost too smart. But here's where the story stops being about a cartel boss and starts being about betrayal from the inside. Word travels fast in cartel territory, faster than Mariano probably realizes, and one of his own men, someone carrying an old debt to Rip Wheeler from long before Mariano ever entered the picture, decides loyalty to Rip outweighs loyalty to his boss. He sends a message north. Short, coded. And when it lands in Rip's hands, it hits him like a lit match dropped into dry grass. Rip doesn't tell Beth right away. Think about that. This is the man who tells Beth everything, and this time he chooses to carry it alone first. He drives out into the middle of the night, following coordinates that lead him 2 hours from the ranch, into a ravine that swallows every ounce of hope he had left. And what he finds there breaks something in him that even losing his own family years ago never touched. Carter is lying in the dirt. The boy Rip taught to rope, to ride, to trust people again after the world had already failed him once, is gone. And Rip doesn't do what you'd expect. He doesn't call the police. He doesn't call John. He doesn't even call Beth. He just sits there, in complete silence, with Carter's body, for almost an hour. No tears you can see, no screaming into the night, just silence, and something ancient and dangerous quietly waking up underneath it. Because this is where the theory takes its darkest, sharpest turn away from anything this show has ever dared to do before. Rip decides, right there in that ravine, that the world is never going to know Carter is dead. Why would a man who just lost someone he loved choose secrecy over grief? Because Rip understands something most people miss in the middle of devastation. As long as Mariano believes Carter is still alive, still valuable, still a card left to play, the ranch has time. Time to plan. Time to hunt. Time to make Mariano believe he is still in control of a game that is already over. So Rip buries Carter himself that night, in a place only he will ever know, marking it with nothing but a single stone so it will never be found by anyone else. When he finally walks back into the ranch house before sunrise, Beth is already sitting on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, unable to sleep, because something deep in her gut has known all night that things went horribly wrong. And the moment her eyes meet his, she doesn't need a single word. So what does a woman like Beth Dutton do with a secret this heavy? Does she break, or does she turn it into the sharpest weapon she has ever held? You are not ready for what happens next. Beth doesn't scream, she doesn't fall apart in the way anyone would expect from a mother figure hearing the worst news of her life. She just goes still. And if you know anything about Beth Dutton, you know stillness from her has always been far more dangerous than rage. Rip says one sentence. He doesn't even need to say it out loud, not really, because the second their eyes meet on that porch, she already knows. She asks anyway, low and shaking, needing to hear it confirmed. Rip nods once, just once. And something in Beth folds inward, grief hitting her like a physical blow that she refuses to let anyone else witness. But here's the twist nobody saw coming. Instead of collapsing, instead of demanding answers or falling into despair, Beth agrees with Rip. She chooses the same path he already walked alone in that ravine. Carter's death stays buried, literally and figuratively, not out of shame, not out of fear, but out of pure, calculated strategy. Because if there's one thing Beth Dutton has learned in her entire life, it's how to turn pain into a weapon sharp enough to cut down anyone who gets in her way. And this loss? This becomes the sharpest weapon she has ever held in her hands. So what do you do when you have to convince an entire family, an entire ranch, that a dead boy is still alive? You lie so completely that even the people closest to you start to believe it. Rip and Beth begin staging phone calls that sound exactly like Carter checking in. They plant small clues here and there, suggesting he's still being held somewhere, still negotiating, still breathing. Beth pulls every financial string she has, funneling money through channels designed to look like ransom payments are still actively being processed, just enough to keep Mariano's men convinced the Duttons still believe there's something worth saving. It's a masterclass in deception, but masterclasses always come with a price, don't they? Behind closed doors, this lie is eating both of them alive in completely different ways. Rip becomes quieter, colder. He starts disappearing to the far end of the ranch for hours at a time. Somewhere no one can see his hands shake whenever he thinks about the boy he buried without so much as a proper goodbye. Meanwhile, Beth throws herself into work with an intensity that borders on terrifying, closing deals, making calls, rebuilding financial walls around the family empire as if raw ambition alone could somehow fill the hole Carter left behind. It doesn't, it never does. But late at night, when the ranch finally goes quiet, the two of them sit together in the dark, sharing whiskey and a guilt neither one of them can say out loud, bound together by a secret that could destroy absolutely everything the second it slips out. And of course, it doesn't stay contained. Secrets like this never do. John Dutton starts asking for updates on the rescue mission that isn't actually happening. Case wants to send men in to handle Mariano directly, completely unaware there's nothing left to rescue. Even the ranch hands, the ones who once treated Carter like a little brother, start noticing the cracks, the inconsistencies, the way certain stories don't quite line up anymore. Every single family dinner becomes a performance. Every question becomes a tightrope walk where one wrong word could bring the entire lie crashing down. Rip and Beth have to sit across the table from people they love and convince them hope still exists, when the truth is that hope died in a ravine weeks ago and never came back. Then comes the twist inside the twist, the moment that turns a quiet cover-up into a full-blown nightmare. Mariano starts sensing something is off. Call it instinct, call it experience, but he's not the kind of man who trusts easily, and something about the Duttons' story doesn't sit right with him anymore. So he does something devastating. He sends a message demanding proof that Carter is still alive, threatening to end negotiations completely if he doesn't get it within days. Think about the position this puts Rip and Beth in. They cannot produce Carter, because Carter doesn't exist anymore. They cannot admit he's gone, because that confession is a death sentence for everyone at that ranch. And if Mariano figures out the truth on his own, he won't just know Carter is dead. He'll know exactly how desperate, how cornered, and how vulnerable the Duttons truly are. So Rip does the only thing he can do. He comes up with a plan built entirely on nerve, because there is no version of this built on truth anymore. He remembers an old contact, a man who used to work with Carter on ranch deliveries long before the kidnapping ever happened. Someone whose voice, over a distorted phone line, might just be close enough to Carter's to pass as real. Beth hates the idea at first. She calls it reckless. She calls it a lie stacked on top of another lie, one that could collapse the second Mariano asks the wrong question. But Rip reminds her of something neither of them can escape anymore. They are already past the point of clean choices. There is no version of this story where they tell the truth and survive it.
So Beth, against every single instinct screaming inside her to stop, helps Rip coach a complete stranger through the most dangerous phone call of his life. Curtains drawn. Lights dimmed except for a single lamp on the desk. Rip stands with his arms crossed and his jaw so tight it looks like it might crack, while Beth sits across from this stranger, feeding him lines through a folded piece of paper. Words Carter might have said. Phrases only someone truly close to this family would ever know. And when Mariano's man finally picks up on the other end of that line, the tension in that room becomes almost unbearable to sit with. The stranger's voice shakes at first. But it steadies, slowly, as Beth silently mouths encouragement from across the table. he says the rehearsed phrases. He mentions a memory about the horses, one that only Carter would actually know. A quiet afternoon memory Beth remembers from months before everything fell apart. And for one fragile moment, it actually works. The voice on the other end seems to accept it. Seems to relax. The call ends with nothing more than a simple warning that they've bought themselves a little more time. Nothing more. But is a little more time really enough when Mariano is already starting to watch the ranch a lot more closely than anyone realizes? Relief on the Dutton ranch never lasts long, does it? Because nothing in this world stays hidden forever, and Mariano is not the kind of man who lets his guard down just because one phone call went smoothly. The theory takes its next dark step when one of his own scouts, a man assigned to watch the ranch quietly from a distance, reports something that should have been impossible to explain away. He's seen Rip returning from the direction of the ravine on multiple nights. Always alone. Always carrying nothing but a shovel wrapped in cloth. A small detail. Almost forgettable if you weren't paying attention. But Mariano is always paying attention, and this one detail plants a seed of suspicion in his mind that simply refuses to die. He doesn't act right away, though. That's what makes him so terrifying. He waits, he watches. And quietly, methodically, he starts moving pieces of his own into position, preparing for the very real possibility that the Duttons have been lying to him from the very beginning. Back inside the ranch house, something strange is happening. The pressure of this secret, this constant, exhausting performance, is pulling Rip and Beth closer together in ways neither of them expected. Grief has a way of stripping people down to what actually matters, and in the middle of all this deception, the two of them find themselves leaning on each other more than they have in years. But even the strongest people crack eventually, and one night after another exhausting day of maintaining the lie in front of family and ranch hands alike, Beth finally breaks. She sits on the edge of their bed, staring at nothing, and admits out loud for the first time that she's terrified they made the wrong choice. Maybe they should have told the truth from the start. Let the grief be real instead of turning Carter's death into a strategic weapon. Rip sits beside her, takes her hand, and says something that becomes the emotional core of this entire theory. Grief doesn't disappear just because you hide it from other people, he tells her. It just waits. And when this is finally over, when Mariano is dealt with once and for all, they will grieve Carter the way he actually deserves. Together. Honestly, without an audience watching, but the ranch doesn't give them the luxury of staying still in that vulnerability for very long. A ranch hand named Colt Reeves, someone who had grown genuinely close to Carter over the past year, starts asking dangerous questions. He notices Carter's horse hasn't been ridden in weeks. He notices the way Rip flinches every single time Carter's name comes up in conversation. Colt isn't a Dutton by blood, but he cares about this family deeply, and his instincts are screaming that something is very wrong. In a tense confrontation near the stables, Colt finally corners Rip and demands the truth. He says he deserves to know if something happened to Carter, especially since he considers him a real friend, not just a coworker. And this is the moment that tests Rip's resolve harder than almost anything else in this entire story. Does he trust Colt with the truth and risk the entire cover-up unraveling? Or does he lie to someone who genuinely cares about this family, protecting the secret at the cost of trust within his own circle? Rip makes a choice that says everything about how far he's willing to go to protect this secret. He gives Colt a half-truth. He admits that things have gotten far more dangerous than anyone realizes, that Carter's situation is complicated, but he insists that revealing anything more could put the entire family at risk, including Colt himself. It isn't the full truth, but it's just enough honesty wrapped around just enough fear to keep Colt quiet, at least for now. Colt walks away from that conversation unsatisfied and suspicious, but loyal enough to the family to hold his tongue, at least until he sees more evidence one way or the other. And that single moment plants a ticking clock over the rest of the season, because now Colt is a variable neither Rip nor Beth can fully control anymore. What happens when loyalty runs out of patience? This is where the story stops being a slow burn and turns into something far more explosive, the point where secrets and lies finally start colliding headfirst with reality in ways that cannot be undone. Mariano, now completely convinced something is deeply wrong with the story he's been fed, decides he's done waiting quietly. He sends a message straight to Rip, bypassing the usual channels entirely, demanding a face-to-face meeting to exchange Carter for a payment that was already negotiated months ago. Read that again. He wants the exchange to happen now. And this puts Rip in the single most dangerous position of the entire season. He cannot show up with Carter because Carter doesn't exist anymore. He cannot refuse the meeting either, because refusing would confirm every single suspicion Mariano already has building in his mind. Beth wants to go with him. She insists on it. But Rip refuses, telling her flat out that if this goes wrong, someone needs to survive to protect what's left of this family, and that person has to be her. The night before the meeting, the entire ranch feels different, heavier, like a storm sitting just beyond the horizon, waiting for the exact right moment to break loose. Rip spends hours quietly cleaning an old rifle, checking it over and over with the same focus he once used the day he confronted his own demons years earlier. Beth watches him from the doorway and says absolutely nothing, because at this point, there's nothing left to say that hasn't already been said between them 100 times over. This isn't a rescue mission anymore. Everyone in that house knows it. This is a reckoning. So when Rip finally drives out alone to meet a man who may already know his darkest secret, is he walking into a negotiation, or is he walking straight into a trap that's been waiting for him the entire time? Rip arrives at the meeting point completely alone, an abandoned property sitting right at the edge of cartel territory, chosen by Mariano for one very specific reason. It offers no cover, no escape routes, nothing but open ground and long sightlines in every direction. And Mariano is already waiting when Rip pulls up, standing beside his vehicle with the calm, unhurried posture of a man who already believes he knows exactly how this ends. The conversation that follows is slow, deliberate, every single word loaded with tension that keeps building the longer it drags on. Mariano asks where Carter is. Rip tells him Carter is safe, close by, just waiting for confirmation that this exchange is going to happen without any trouble. And for a second, it almost sounds believable. But Mariano studies Rip's face for a long, uncomfortable moment, and something in his expression shifts completely. It's the look of a predator who has just realized his prey is bluffing, and honestly has known it for a while now. Then Mariano says the one thing that changes absolutely everything. He tells Rip he already knows Carter is dead, that his scouts confirmed it days ago, that this entire meeting was never actually about an exchange at all. It was about watching Rip lie straight to his face, testing exactly how far the Duttons would go to protect their pride, even standing in the shadow of certain death. Let that sink in for a second. This whole meeting, the tension, the negotiation, the careful planning, none of it was real to Mariano. It was a test, and Rip walked right into it. The moment stretches into something almost unbearable. Silence hanging heavy between two men who both already know the truth, now sits completely exposed between them, with nowhere left to hide. Rip doesn't deny it. What would be the point anymore? There's nothing left to protect at this stage, no lie sturdy enough to hold up under the weight of what Mariano just said. So instead, Rip asks him the only question that actually matters. Why did he do it? Why did Carter have to die when he was never really a threat to anyone? Just a boy caught between two worlds he never chose to be part of in the first place. And Mariano's answer becomes the emotional gut punch of this entire theory, the kind of line that recontextualizes everything that's happened up to this point. He says Carter reminded him too much of himself at that same age. Hopeful, defiant, believing that loyalty from powerful people actually meant safety. He says he killed Carter not out of hatred, but out of something he calls twisted mercy, sparing him from becoming a pawn in a war that would have used him again and again until there was nothing left of him worth saving. Does that make it better? Does that make it worse? You decide. Rip's hands tighten around the rifle at his side, grief and rage colliding into something dangerously close to the surface, something that looks like it's about to break loose right there in the open field. But before he can act on any of it, before he can even take a single step forward, Mariano's men reveal themselves from positions hidden across the property, rifles raised, making it brutally clear that any move Rip makes now is going to be his very last. Just like that, the balance of power in this entire situation flips completely. Rip isn't standing across from one man anymore. He's standing in the middle of an ambush that was set the second he agreed to show up alone. Think about everything that led to this exact moment. Months of a cover-up built on whispered phone calls and coached strangers. A grieving family lying to itself just to survive one more day. A ranch hand circling closer to the truth than anyone realized. And now Rip, standing completely exposed on open ground, outnumbered, outgunned, face to face with the man who pulled the trigger on Carter and felt nothing but calm while he did it. Every choice Rip and Beth made to protect this secret, every risk, every sleepless night, every lie stacked on top of another lie has led directly to this single, unbearable moment where there is no more room left to maneuver. So what happens next? Does Mariano finish what he started months ago in that ravine, or does he let Rip walk away one more time, just to see how much further he can push a man who has already lost everything he swore to protect? Does Beth even know what's happening right now back at the ranch, waiting in the dark for a phone call that might never come? And when the truth about Carter finally reaches the rest of the family, John, Case, everyone who's been kept in the dark this entire time, will they understand why Rip and Beth chose silence over grief? Or will this secret tear the Dutton family apart from the inside in a way that no cartel war ever could? This is where the theory leaves its most gripping cliffhanger yet, setting the stage for a confrontation between Rip, Beth, and Mariano that started as a quiet cover-up and is about to turn into something far more permanent, far more personal, and far more dangerous than anything the Dutton family has ever faced before. One thing is certain. Whatever comes next, Dutton Ranch will never be the same again.